And welcome back to the Marvel Timeline Rewatch, where we are going to recap all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe in chronological order with movies, TV shows, one-shots, and more. Last week, we covered the Avengers, which capped off our phase one of the podcast. Movies that we covered were Captain America, the First Avenger, Captain Marvel, Iron Man 2, The Incredible Hulk, Thor, and, again, lastly, the Avengers, along with all of the one-shots, like Agent Carter, the one-shot. We had Item 47, The Consultant, several. Something funny happens when, yeah. So many different things here. We also talked about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which was a full reaction episode with full spoilers, so it has nothing to do with Phase 1. So, with that being said, we are going to have our own little award ceremony, kind of like the Oscars of our podcast.
Yeah.
I don't know what do we call this? I mean, the Timies?
The Timies, yeah.
I mean, it's the timeline order. So, All right, welcome to the Timies. Also, might get confused with the Timmies.
Yeah.
Which the Timmies actually kind of sounds funny too. So, for right now, we're going to go with the Timies. That might evolve later on into the Timmies. But, so welcome to that. What we're going to first do is talk about our movie rankings, where we rank each of these movies with the rest of them. So do we want to start with Captain America, the First Avenger, and just go down the list on where we rank them? Or do we want to start with our last place movies?
Let's start with the last place.
Okay,
and work
so
our way up.
in 7th, we're going to talk about this, and we can reverse who goes first. I put The Incredible Hulk. I'm sorry. That movie is awful.
I put The Incredible Hulk as well. Not my favorite.
Storyline, I didn't mind the storyline. There were a lot of flaws, like, the technology was awful. It looked like it belonged in the 90s when it actually came out after Iron Man 1, and it was just horrible.
And I think that's my biggest beef with it, is that it did not look like the rest of the Marvel movies that were even at that time.
Came out after Iron Man 1, happened during Iron Man 2.
Yeah.
And the technology was just way off.
Yeah.
I know Tony is very technological and advanced, but the rest of the world in Iron Man 2 was way ahead of time than what The Incredible Hulk was.
Yep.
So, number 6.
I actually had Captain America, First Avenger at 6. I know, that's unpopular. I mean, it was just, even watching it for the first time, that was what I expected that movie to be. Nothing really shocked me. It was like, all right, this guy's going to be a patriot. And
it's an origin story. I mean, the origin story movies, I feel like, they're hard.
Yeah, but Iron Man was an origin story, and that was exciting.
I think
Thor was an origin story, and that was exciting. I don't know. I don't know. Wasn't my favorite. I thought it was pretty bland, and you could tell what was going to happen.
So. With you saying that and me saying that you're dead to me, I picked Thor for the exact same reason. So, Thor, great cinematography, great effects, cool, everything out of this world type of thing. But yeah, it was just, we had a lot of flaws in that movie with not naming county hospitals or why did a taser take Thor down when he's literally the god of thunder?
Yeah.
And shoots lightning at people. A lot of things just didn't make sense, and it didn't add up to me. Yeah. So, number 5, I had Iron Man 2. It was just okay. The whole Justin Hammer stuff is just literally Iron Man 2 to me was like, Tony Stark is having a midlife crisis.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was the focal point of the movie.
Justin Hammer was a laughable villain. That was just not great.
Yes.
That's my least favorite of the Iron Man movies. So I can agree with that. But I actually put Thor for 5th place. I liked the story more of this than I did Captain America, because the more philosophical route of I've talked about this before, but like, what are you without your powers, or like, what are you without your suit? And you see that with Thor, and it's quite the opposite in Captain America when he gets these powers. So I thought it was interesting. It's Thor rediscovers himself, and you can actually see that character change throughout that movie, and I find that one more interesting. And I don't know, I like the Norse mythology stuff, and I think that first movie sets up, Thor for the rest of his movies. It sets up Loki for the rest of his time in the series. So I don't know. I find that one to be a really good like origin movie.
Yeah. Number 4.
I actually had the Avengers for 4. This I liked the movie, but it was another one that I feel like you knew what was going to happen when watching it.
Well, you know what? All of them. You know what was going to happen with every Marvel movie minus Infinity War.
I know, but I still like to be amazed in a sense, and it was like, yeah, they're all going to come together. They have their little spat, and then they go defeat the villain.
That's every movie minus Infinity War.
I know, but I like to be surprised. I just was not surprised in the Avengers.
So you hate the entire series except for Infinity War.
I'm just saying. There are other movies I like for the storyline.
All of you listeners and watchers on YouTube, when we get to Infinity War and Jacob does not rank it number 1, remember this day.
Yeah. Endgame is probably my favorite. But
we're not there yet.
I know, but that would be my number 1.
My number 4 was Iron Man. It was good. It was a good kickoff to the series.
Yep.
Officially, because that was the first one released.
Sure.
But I felt like it was still slightly behind on technology in 2008. We're talking about technology that's so far ahead of its time with the arc reactor and stuff like that. It just, I felt like there were better. I had 3 better movies.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, number 3, I had Captain Marvel.
Mm.
This one's an oddity because of how late it came out in the actual series.
Yeah.
Because this is actually a Phase 4 movie of the MCU. It came out in between Infinity War and Endgame, so it was ahead of its time in terms of production and visual effects and everything like that. I just thought the storyline was cool. A human taken off of this earth and basically turned into a villain that she didn't realize was a villain, and then helps the villain that's actually the good guys. I thought it was interesting. It sets up for a bunch of stuff as well, and you get to see young Nick Fury and young Agent Coulson.
Yeah, and see, that's what I'm talking about. Like, that movie, you watch it and you're always surprised because like the whole time you're like, oh, who is the good guys and who are the bad guys? And then
if you don't know who the Skrulls
are, and if even coming up, there's supposedly a series going to come out that's called Skrull Invasion. So like, are the Skrulls actually good people even after the Captain Marvel movie?
Yeah.
Like, or do they actually come back? So yeah, that one, I like that for those reasons. But my number 3 was actually Iron Man 2. So I'm a sucker for the Iron Man movies.
You really are.
I don't know. There's something about it. Like, Tony Stark is just such a relatable hero. In his movies, you see that he struggles with things that average people struggle with. And despite being a billionaire playboy philanthropist, as he said in the Avengers, like,
there's a lot of mental issues with.
Yeah.
He battles through mental health a lot. And we get even more into that in Iron Man 3 and at the end of Iron Man 3. Well,
and it's the fact that despite all the money, all the fame, all that he is, he's another person, and he's still like, he's never settled with what he is or what he has. Like, he keeps reinventing, he keeps improving. Like, he never.
He sees a flaw and he's down. Like, I have to fix this.
Yeah.
Fair. So number 2?
Number 2, I have Captain Marvel, which I won't reiterate it, but it's a lot of those things that like constantly kept you guessing. Really explain some of the, like, why does Fury wear an eye patch kind of stuff, and and constantly kept you guessing. And that was one where like I just loved what they did with Lawson, and like, who is she? And you just never know until all the pieces come together in the end. And then when we did that episode, we talked about like the little details that they did, like the changing of the blood, like in her mind, and what it actually was, and how they incorporate like Monica Rambeau and her like her time in the Air Force and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that one should get a little asterisk beside it because it wasn't really a Phase 1 movie. But if we were doing it in chronological order, then...
And we'll talk about that here in a minute more, too, when we get to the awards program.
Yep.
Number 2, I had Captain America, the First Avenger. It's a little biased pick there.
That's like our biggest discrepancy.
Is Captain America.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had it very low. I had it very high. You had it second to worst. I had second to best.
Yeah.
It's whatever. I remember when this one came out, and I hadn't watched it yet, and somebody mentioned that, oh, he died. Too bad he dies at the end. I'm like, what? And this is before the Avengers were going to come out and everything like that. So I was just like, this is okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then I watched it. I was like, oh my God, I love this movie. I will admit, though, I don't like the other Captain America movies. Winter Soldier is okay.
I like the Winter Soldier.
I don't like Civil War.
Oh, really?
I don't like Civil War, and we'll talk about this later.
Definitely not one of my favorites.
Specifically because it's not a Captain America movie.
But
it's an Avengers movie.
Yeah.
But what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Number 1, I had the Avengers. I thought it brought everything together. It was the best movie in Phase 1, in my opinion. I know you had it ranked 4.
Yeah.
But it had what you wanted out of a Marvel movie. You could have wrapped it up right there and be done with the series, or it builds into more, and that's exactly what it did. It built into more.
Yeah. And it's not to say that I didn't like it. Like, I think it's a great movie. It's just
the 3 you have
in comparison to the other 3.
Good. Yeah.
So number 1 is Iron Man for me. That one just set him up so well. And again, I like this one for the same reason I like Thor. It's like they go through this crisis and this really an identity crisis of like, who are you? What do you do? And then they reshape themselves, and then, they continue on with their life and rebranding. And I enjoyed that. And the fact that he has like realistic reactions to things, like he gets trapped in a cave, he gets out, he builds a suit, and he goes kills the people that trapped him. Like, that is a very authentic reaction. So I enjoyed that movie, and Iron Man is a crucial character in this series, so why not have the first movie that kicked it off?
All right, so that's our rankings. Let's talk about the Timies. So we have 5 categories. We have Best Visual Effects, Best Soundtrack, Best Cinematography, Best Supporting Character, and then, of course, the very end, Best Leading Character.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start at the bottom here with Best Visual Effects. The nominees are The Avengers and Captain Marvel. And then, Jacob, who is the winner?
Yeah, so the winner's going to be The Avengers. And again, this was that disclaimer or asterisk we were talking about with Captain Marvel. It's that, yes, this one probably does have the best visual effects, but it was made, way after these movies were made. So really it needs to go to a movie.
Considering the fact that The Avengers is an 11-year-old movie.
Yeah.
The visual effects are very good. And I feel like they could stand a time today.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're that good. You see a lot of older movies where, and even current movies, you're watching, you're like, oh, this is not going to look good in 10 years. Or you think about a movie from the 80s or 90s, you're like, oh.
Well, I
don't think the Avengers is like that.
No, and I think of like the original Jurassic Park movies where it's like, or like Jaws, where you have like the robotic animals that you're like, oh,
even
this
like
does
some of
not
the old,
look great.
like some of the old like Superman movies and stuff like that. It's just like, oh, this is
even
not good.
Even like some of the first
war movies and stuff like that.
Well, not the first Star Wars movies, but really 4, 5, and 6, the first movies to come out.
Right.
They had really good effects for that time, but you're watching it now and you're like compared to the Star Wars movies we have now, far different. So, I think the Avengers obviously stands, the test of time with this series, because even if you were to watch them watch them all together, I've not noticed that big of a discrepancy between visual effects from even all the way back to Iron Man to where we are now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So.
So best soundtrack. There was only one. I mean, really, you could have probably said either Iron Man movie.
Yeah.
But really, insert Iron movie here.
Mm-hmm.
But we went with Iron Man 2.
Yep.
It's no surprise that the movie that has the guy that is a Black Sabbath song is the best soundtrack. So that Iron Man 2 wins. Best cinematography. The nominees were The Avengers and Thor. And Jacob?
Yeah. So we're gonna go with Thor on this one. Really for just the shot composition and being able to take you into a place that nobody's been before. Like, what is Asgard? What is that going to look like? What does Jotunheim
and that was
look like?
really cool when they brought, because you're coming up and you're like, oh, it's like a mountain, and then they're like, oh, that's the bottom of Asgard, and then it comes up, and then all of a sudden you just see the whole palace, and you're like, oh my god, this is really cool.
Yeah, and it doesn't just stop there. Really, for me, it's even in New Mexico, like the shots they did there, and working with the destroyer and stuff like that. Yeah. So I thought that was really well done.
It was.
An outside perspective could even be, I would say, for as bad as the Incredible Hulk is, the cinematography was. The idea behind the cinematography I thought was cool, like with the shading and the stuff like that. It was just a bad movie.
You could
overall.
really say it was a dark horse.
Yeah, that would.
It was pretty dark.
It was pretty dark.
Okay, so best supporting character, we have Scarlett Johansson as the Black Widow, and Tom Hiddleston as Loki. Jacob?
Yep. So that one's gonna go to Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow. Being in the Iron Man movies and setting up, what her persona is going to be there. And then the role she played in Avengers, kind of assembling the team. And you saw it's at least one time, if not more, in Avengers where you saw like raw emotion, like especially after her interaction with the Hulk on the SHIELD helicarrier. And she's like having a panic attack when Fury tells him, who's got eyes on Hawkeye, and she has to go confront him. So, yeah.
She did a lot, literally, to support the team. She brought the team together, going out to get the Hulk, basically overseeing Iron Man there for the longest time, then bringing him in. She really brought everybody together. My favorite scene of her so far in the Phase 1 was the interrogation scene where she was getting the business and then took them all down while being tied up.
Yeah, and I think what a lot of people gloss over is that, and her and Hawkeye talk about this as well, that she's a spy. She's not necessarily like a field soldier.
Yeah.
But yet she's called upon to go out there with the Avengers and and save New York. So big step up moment.
Yeah. And last but not least, the best leading character nominees are Chris Evans as Steve Rogers, aka Captain America, or Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, a.k.a. Iron Man. And the winner is... Jacob?
It is Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark.
As much as we literally picked our two favorite characters, and I even agree Robert Downey Jr. did have a better...
And what we've talked about this a lot, but Marvel has done a great job at casting the right people to play the right roles. Like, and that's not to say like Chris Evans is perfect for Captain America. I wouldn't want anybody else.
Which is very interesting because he's completely different from Johnny Storm and Fantastic Four.
Exactly. But wouldn't want anybody else playing that. Wouldn't want anybody else playing Thor, Loki. Like, I just feel like they have cast spot on.
Yeah.
With some of these guys, I just think if you look at Robert Downey Jr. the person, and then you look at who Tony Stark is supposed to be, it was like they were made for each other.
Yeah.
And the way he conveys, his struggles, his persona, like still being this flamboyant, arrogant person, but still showing that softer side, that he does have fears and that, he does care for people and stuff like that. So, and he was in 3 movies. So and he was in that helps.
3 movies and a 1-shot.
Yeah, and a 1-shot.
Yeah. No, he was not in a 1-shot.
It was in post-credit.
He was in 4 movies.
Yeah.
He wasn't even in post-credit scenes. He was in the Incredible Hulk.
Oh, that's true.
He's at the very end of the movie.
At the very end, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ties it all back. Okay, so that's going to wrap it all up. Again, if you're not following us on social media, please do. Timeline Rewatch. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you're listening to this on a podcast app, be sure to like, subscribe, or give us a rating of 5 stars, hopefully.
Yep.
Also leave a comment. Like, comments help our ratings to get them up more when people are looking at the show.
Yeah.
Going through and seeing a comment like, best Marvel podcast ever. that helps me when I'm finding a podcast.
And I'd be curious to hear other people's perspectives on some of these awards. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like these are a little out of the box, just looking at Marvel themselves. So,
Yeah.
like, how other people would have ranked, some of these movies or who they would have chosen for some of these awards would be interesting as well.
So, in that comment section on YouTube or even in the podcast, you give us your rankings of how you rank these 7 movies and who you would put at best leading character, best supporting character, best cinematography, soundtrack, and visual effects. I think that would be cool to see how you all rank as well. But until next time, where we start with Marvel Timeline Rewatch Phase 2, have a good one.